My dear brothers and sisters, let us begin with a moment of silencing. Let us breathe in the stillness and allow our hearts to open. What is freedom? And what does it mean to live by faith? So many today are searching for peace, for purpose, for something real that no one can take away. Some search in crowded places, others in quiet tears. But deep down, every human heart longs for the same thing: to be loved, to belong, to be free. Faith, when lived with sincerity, is not a cage. It is the breath of the soul. It does not imprison us. It teaches us how to walk, how to live, how to love. My dear friends, let us speak about fear, not with judgment, but with honesty, because fear is something we all know. It comes quietly in the middle of the night. It creeps in when we are alone, when the future is uncertain, when we feel small in a world that is too loud. Fear of failure, fear of sickness, fear of not being enough, fear of being forgotten. I have met a mother in the outskirts of a slum who carried her child on her back, walking for miles under the burning sun just to find food. I asked her what kept her going, and she said softly, "I believe God sees us." That is faith. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward even when fear is present, because she believed she was not alone. This is what the gospel teaches us again and again. Do not be afraid. These are not empty words. These are the words Jesus speaks to the trembling heart. He says them not from a throne, but from the road, from the boat in the storm, from the Garden of Gethsemane. He knows what fear feels like. He cried. He sweat blood. He did not run from suffering, but embraced it with love. Faith does not erase our fear, but it teaches us how to walk with it. It gives us eyes to see beyond the storm. Think of Peter on the water. As long as he looked at Jesus, he walked. But when he saw the waves, he began to sink. And still, Jesus reached out. Always he reaches out. There is a kind of freedom that comes only when we learn to trust. Not in our own strength, but in the one who walks beside us. Faith teaches us to breathe deeply even when the world shakes. It tells the single mother, "You are not forgotten." It tells the elderly man in the hospital bed, "You are not alone." It tells the prisoner, "You are still a child of God." And yes, there will be moments when our faith feels small. That is all right. A mustard seed is enough. What matters is that we keep opening the door of our heart again and again and allow God to step in. So I ask you gently, what fears still hold you? What keeps you from living freely, from loving fully? Let us bring those fears into the light, not to shame them, but to let grace touch them. Let us walk with each other, slowly and faithfully, toward the kind of freedom that only love can give. And when fear comes again, as it surely will, may we remember the voice that says, "Do not be afraid, I am with you." Let us listen to that voice. Let us trust it and thus live by it. And let us, in turn, be that voice for others. My dear brothers and sisters, there is a quiet struggle that takes place in every human heart. A struggle between living for ourselves and living for others, between closing the door and opening it, between grasping and giving. And yet, in this hidden struggle, faced with a soft but persistent voice, you were not made to live only for yourself. Selfishness is subtle. It does not shout, it whispers. It tells us we deserve more. It tempts us to think only of our needs, our plans, our comfort. But slowly, almost without noticing, it begins to shrink our world. It builds fences around our hearts. And when we live only for ourselves, we become less free. We are weighed down by our own desires, our own fears, our own pride. It becomes difficult to see others, to hear them, to care. But faith, true faith, gently breaks those fences. It sets us free from the prison of self-centeredness. It reminds that love, greater than comfort, and service more powerful than control. Faith lifts our eyes to the needs others and whispers again, "This too is your brother. This too is your sister." I think of a woman I met who cared for her disabled son for over 20 years. She had no riches, no vacations, no fame, yet there was peace in her eyes, a freedom, even in her tiredness. I asked her what kept her going. She said, "Love makes things lighter." This is what faith does. It transforms sacrifice into joy. It teaches us that we are never poorer when we give. Jesus lived this truth. He did not hold back his time, his words, or his love. He stopped for the blind beggar. He touched the leper. He wept with the mourning. He shared meals with the forgotten. And he asks us to do the same, not just in grand gestures, but in the small, hidden ways of each day. There is someone near you who is lonely, someone whose burdens are heavy, someone who needs a gentle word or a listening ear. Do we see them? Do we hear them? Let us not wait for perfect conditions to begin loving. Let us not say, "When I have more, I will give." The time to love is now. The freedom to give is already in our hands. So I invite you with humility and hope, open your heart a little wider. Make space for the other. Allow God's love to move through you, not as a duty, but as a joy. And in that giving, you will discover something beautiful, that when we forget ourselves for love, we become most fully who we are. This is the freedom of faith, the freedom of a heart that no longer clings, but gives. The freedom that leads us not inward, but outward, to communion, to mercy, to life. Let us walk that path together. My beloved brothers and sisters, there is a freedom that grows in isolation, but in communion. A freedom that blossoms when we realize we belong to one another. Faith teaches us this gently, patiently, that we are not meant to walk alone. We are not saved alone. We are not healed alone. We are not free alone. In the quiet corners of this world, far from applause or headlines, there are people who embody this truth with their lives. I think of a group of neighbors in a poor village who came together to rebuild the house of a widow whose home had collapsed in the storm. They had little, scraps of wood, rusted nails, calloused hands, but they brought what they had, and together, with laughter and sweat, they built a shelter of dignity. They were free, not because they had much, but because they chose each other. Faith reminds us again and again, you are brother's keeper, not out of obligation, but because we belong to each other. Because in the other, especially the one who suffers, the one who is wounded, we see the face of Christ. We do not find God by rising above others, but by kneeling beside them. The gospel never invites us to walk past the poor. It calls us to stop, to see, to listen. And not only to the poor in material things, but also to those who are poor in hope, poor in love, poor in joy. There are people in our families, our parishes, our streets who are silently crying out. Sometimes they do not ask for much, just to be noticed, just to be seen. Faith opens our hearts to this cry. It calls us out of our isolation. It heals the lie that we must be strong on our own. In truth, we are made to depend on each other, to lean on each other, to carry one another. And in that carrying, there is deep freedom, a freedom from loneliness, a freedom from pride, a freedom that builds bridges instead of walls. Let us remember how Jesus sent his disciples, not one by one, but two by two. Even he, the Son of God, longed for the companionship of his friends in Gethsemane. How then can we think our journey is meant to be walked alone? So I ask you gently, whom has God placed near you today? Who walks beside you in silence? Who waits for your hand, your word, your love? Let us choose communion over isolation. Let us walk together, and in doing so, may we find a deeper freedom, the being bound by love, not chains of being held. not held back. Let us live as a people of faith who belong to one another. Let us not pass by, but draw near. And in drawing near, let us meet Christ. My dear friends, one of the most tender gifts that faith brings is the freedom to forgive. Not the easy kind of forgiveness we speak of quickly with words, but the deep, painful kind that reaches into our wounds and asks us to trust again, to hope again, to love again. This forgiveness is not forgetting. It is not pretending that the hurt didn't happen. No. Forgiveness is a courageous act of love. It is a decision born of grace. And it sets us free when we hold on to anger, to resentment, to the memory of an injustice that was done to us. It weighs us down. It builds invisible chains around our hearts, chains of bitterness, chains of suspicion, chains of pain. And though we may not see them, we feel them. We become prisoners of the past. But faith shows us another way, a way of healing, not by erasing the past, but by transforming it with mercy. I remember speaking to a woman who had lost her brother to violence. She carried that grief for many years. It hardened her. But one day, she walked into a chapel and simply sat in silence. She said, "I didn't ask for anything. I just cried. And in that crying, something changed." She didn't forget what happened, but she found peace. And slowly, she began to forgive, not because it was easy, but because she was tired of hating. This is the power of grace. It does not force, it invites, it does not erase, it renews. And in forgiveness, we are made new. Jesus on the cross gave us this freedom. "Father, forgive them," he said. As he was being nailed, as he was being mocked, as he was being crushed by the very ones he came to save, he could have condemned. He chose mercy. And in doing so, he broke the cycle of hate. How many wounds in our families, in our communities, in our world could begin to heal if we dare to forgive? How many hearts could be mended if we laid down our weapons, not just of war, but of pride, of vengeance, of silence? Forgiveness is not weakness, it is strength. It is the strength of Christ. And in it, we are made free, not just the one who is forgiven, but the one who forgives. So I invite you quietly, humbly. Is there someone you need to forgive? Someone whose name brings pain to your heart? Someone you have tried to forget but cannot? Bring that name to prayer. Place it before the Lord, not to justify, not to excuse, but to begin, to be in the journey of letting go, of breathing again, of living free. Let mercy be stronger than memory. Let grace write a new story. Let love have the last word. My dear brothers and sisters, as we continue on this journey of faith, we come to a realization that can be both and humbling, liberating. The great freedom we can experience is the freedom to serve. Yes, to serve. This is the paradox of the gospel. The world tells us that freedom means doing what we want, having control, being independent. But Jesus, who came to show us the way, taught us that true freedom is found in surrender, in giving ourselves for others. I think of the many people I have met in my life who have lived this truth so simply and so profoundly. One woman, a mother of 5, lived in a small house with very little. She had no money to spare, yet she spent her days taking care of the elderly in her neighborhood, bringing food to the sick, and lending a listening ear to those in pain. I asked her once how she managed it all. She simply smiled and said, "When I serve, I am free. The more I give, the more I receive." Her face, worn with years of labor, glowed with a peace that could only come from living this radical freedom of love. Jesus, our model, was the ultimate example of this freedom to serve the Son of God with all the power of heaven at his fingertips. He chose to kneel and wash the feet of his disciples. He who had no need gave everything. He showed us that true freedom is not found in being served, but in serving, especially those who have no ability to repay us, those on the margins, the poor, the forgot. Serving does not always look grand. It is often hidden, unnoticed, unthanked. It is in the quiet moments when we choose to love, when we choose to help, when we choose to listen. It is in the small acts of kindness that no one sees but God. It is in the moments of daily life when we set aside our own desires to be present for someone else. Faith teaches us that these small acts are never small in God's eyes. The freedom to serve also comes with a responsibility to the poor, to the marginalized, to the suffering. We are called to see beyond our own world, beyond our own needs, and recognize the pain and the hope in the eyes of others. When we serve Christ Himself. Jesus said, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." The hungry, the sick, the imprisoned, the orphaned. Each of them is Christ among us. When we serve them, we are serving Him. So I ask you today, my dear friends, how are we serving? Are we content to remain in our comfort zones? Or are we daring to step out and give ourselves? The call to serve is not just for a few, not just for those with special gifts or positions, but for all of us. It is the call of every Christian. Let us ask ourselves, gently but clearly, What does it mean for me to serve today? Who can I help? Who can I listen to? Who can I love? In these questions, we find the path to true freedom. Freedom that only comes through love, through service, through giving ourselves away. May we have the courage to answer this call, not tomorrow, but today. For in giving, we receive. And in serving, we are set free. My dear friends, as we reflect on the beauty of faith and the freedom it brings, let us carry these thoughts in our hearts pure, that to live is to love, to serve, to forgive, and to give ourselves freely to others. We are called not to a life of ease, but to a life of compassion, of courage, and of hope. When we choose to live in this way, we discover a freedom that the world cannot offer, one that fills our hearts with peace, with joy, and with the presence of God Himself. Remember, dear friends, it is in the quiet acts of love that we find the strength to change the world. In every smile, every helping hand, every moment of forgiveness, we echo the love of Christ. And as we do so, we become instruments of mercy, instruments of peace. So, as you leave this place today, I ask you to carry with you the challenge: how will I live this freedom? How will I serve? How will I forgive? How will I choose to love? May the grace of God guide your steps, and may His love fill your hearts with the courage to live out these truths each and every day. Good luck on your journey, my dear friends. I am deeply thankful for each one of you, for your presence, for your willingness to listen, to learn, and to love. Thank you for the gift of sharing this time together. Go in peace, and may God bless you abundantly. With all my heart, thank you.